Hello and welcome back to Nick's Allotment Diary. So it's been a long time since you've seen the allotment. I've had a short break from making videos, but now I'm back. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the onion bed. So these are the heat treated onions that I grew earlier on in the season. To be honest, they've not done that well. A lot of them are quite small, haven't developed particularly well, but the ones in the centre of the bed have done better. And as you can see, they're starting to flop over now. We've had a lot of hot weather in the last week or so, but this weekend it's cooled down and we've had some rain. So I think there might be some white rot in this bed because a few of the onions I pulled up had started to rot at the base. So I think I'm going to pull these fairly soon. Some of them, as you can see, have quite a decent size. So I think I'm going to cut my losses and pull them up and let them dry out and see what the onions are like. Now, I did have garlic in this bed. That didn't do very well. I have got some photos of the garlic that I did pull up. The elephant garlic was better than the normal garlic, so I pulled that out and I put some parsnips, which we've had a bit of a patchy germination of, in the place where the garlic was, and also some dwarf French beans. These are a variety called Canadian Wonder. I've got a row here and I've got a row in another bed, which I'll show you in a few minutes time. Moving over to the tomatoes, some of the tomatoes that were growing in the two pots. So I did an experiment with an air pot and a regular pot, and as you can see, both of the tomato plants have got quite a few trusses of tomatoes on. Now they're a variety called Yellow Perfection, so they're going to be a yellow tomato. There is a bit of mottling on the leaves. I think that's down to deficiencies. I have used some Epsom salts on them in the last week, so hopefully that should pick them up. But there's quite a few tomatoes on each of the plants. At the moment, I can't really say that either of the plants are any better than the other, both about the same height. So I haven't got any conclusions yet on the air pot. Moving over to this bed has now got brassicas in since you've last seen it. So there's some leeks down one side, but the majority of the bed is brassicas. So I've got some kale, there's dwarf kale and red kale. Some cauliflowers, they've not done particularly well. A couple of them have just sort of bolted. I don't know whether it's the hot weather. But some of them are hearting up. And then I've got Brussels sprouts and cabbages and a few calabrese, so that's green broccoli. So everything's doing pretty well in the brassica bed. Now over to the bed where I've planted the squash plants. So this one here is the pink banana squash, which they're going to not be banana shaped, these ones, I think, because they're a cross. There's one that's growing. That one's definitely set, so it's going to be a round one. Some of the flower there at the end. So hopefully I should get some decent sized squash. These are the ones that were donated by Erica of Erica's Little Welsh Garden. So this is a butternut squash plant, and there's the first one that's set. So hopefully I should get a lot more on this plant as it grows. It is looking a little bit yellow again. I have fed them, so hopefully that should sort itself out. This one here is a pumpkin, dwarf pumpkin, only just starting to flower. And then here we have the yellow courgette plant. Now these always do well. Had one last year, produced loads of courgettes. I only ever bother planting one plant now because that produces as many courgettes as I can deal with. Over here we have another squash plant. This one I think is the Japanese squash Uchiki curry. It's only just really starting to grow, so I'll let it grow across the bed here towards the butternut squash over on the other side. Now to the bed with the tomato plants, the outdoor tomato plants that I thought I'd got a problem with earlier in the year. I thought I'd got weed killer damage, but I think I've come to the conclusion now that maybe that wasn't the case. They were just damaged by cool weather. So this one has produced some fruit. I picked some yesterday. There are some green ones at the bottom. This one is a moneymaker, I think. Now this is an unusual variety. This is the black tomatoes, and they are actually almost jet black. Haven't seen this variety before. The plant was donated to me, so I don't actually know its name other than the black tomato, but be interested to see what they taste like. They haven't ripened fully yet, although they're black on one side, they're a bit green on the other side, so they need a bit longer to ripen up before I try one. And then we have some yellow perfection tomatoes. This one is the same variety as you saw over in the air pots, so this one hasn't done very well in the ground at all. But again, the growth looks okay, doesn't look stunted, so I'm going to leave that one. This one is a variety called Ildi. I only planted it in its position about a couple of weeks ago. It produces sort of yellow pear-shaped tomatoes, relatively small. And here's another yellow perfection. Over to the sweet corn. You saw me plant the sweet corn last month, I think it was. They're now starting to produce relatively small plants actually, but they are producing the cobs at the bottom, and these are the male flowers at the top. So basically what happens is pollen falls down from the male flower onto these silky tassels, and that pollinates those, and that's what forms the kernels in the cobs of the corn. So not particularly large plants. I think I've had larger plants than this before, but we shall see what sort of corn it produces. I've got these cages that I put in, so I've got some orange pepper plants which I've planted a few weeks ago. Still no sign of any flowers on them yet. There are a few buds. As you can see, slugs and snails have had a good nibble at them. They seem to like pepper plants. This one is a crimson crush tomato. So this is one of the blight resistant tomatoes. I've got a cane in the middle to grow them up, give them a bit of support. And this one is a variety called Piccolo. So this is a dwarf cherry tomato that I've grown from supermarket tomato. Now over to the potatoes in buckets. As you can see, a lot of the foliage has died back on these potatoes. That is mainly because they're ready for harvest. But I have noticed a few brown patches on some of the leaves, which could be a sign of blight maybe. Example there. So I'm going to pull the leaves off all of these buckets now, and in a future video I will do some potato reveals from these buckets. Over to this bed, got some beetroot, excuse the weeds, quite a big beetroot there, so probably need to harvest those relatively soon. I mentioned before the Canadian Wonder beans. I have got some more plants of these. As you can see, they produce these flat podded, almost runner bean like pods. So there's quite a few of those plants. I harvested some beans off this row yesterday, so there are plenty coming. And also amongst the weeds there are the tomatillo plants. They're the ones with the yellow flowers. You can see some under there. Moving over to the climbing French beans. So on this side we have the Blue Lake French beans. They're just really starting to climb up properly the poles now. Some of the plants higher than others, some are only just starting to climb. I did have quite a bit of a problem getting them going. I did have some slug damage, so a lot of the plants got damaged and I had to replant the plants around the base of the canes. And then on this side we have a variety called Cobra. And you can see there are a few beans already starting on this side. Again, some of the plants are climbing higher than others at the moment, but eventually they'll all catch up and it will mean I get a staggered crop of beans. Underneath the beans I've got some of these oak leaf lettuces. They've done really well. Harvested quite a few leaves off these. They are starting to show signs of bolting now, they're going taller. I think the hot dry weather we've had over the last week has probably caused them to bolt. So I do need to harvest some more of these plants and maybe get some more started. Over to the bed with the plum tree in. The plum tree, as you can see, has put on quite a lot of growth. Earlier on in the season, a lot of it had been nibbled back and was distorted and brown, but it's put on a lot of new growth this year, so I'm quite pleased with that. I don't think I've got any plums on this tree. A lot of them fell off, so no plums from my tree this year. But if you look at just over here, my neighbour has a massive plum tree that grows next to my allotments, and a lot of the plums do fall. She's very kindly said that I can harvest any plums from the tree that I want, so on this side. So I have had some nice plums from that tree. Moving over, I'll now show you. This is 2 elephant garlic plants that I've allowed to go to seed. So they've produced some really nice flowers. You can see there quite decent size, and the bees love these. So I'm going to let them actually carry on and produce seed, and I'm going to see if I can grow some elephant garlic from seed. In addition to the elephant garlic, we've got some massive flowers on some leek plants that I've allowed to grow to seed. So as you can see, look at the size of that one. There's several of them. So they do look nice, and I do think they look spectacular, so I've left them in the border, and there are even some smaller ones that are forming from down the base. So plenty of leek seed from these plants, I think, later in the season. Sweet peas. I've had mixed success with the sweet peas, to be honest. I've built this wigwam earlier in the year, and probably about 2 or 3 of the plants have done really well. So this white one's done well, pink one, that pinky one has done well. But over on the other side, some of the plants, see there, have not done anything at all, hardly grown anything. That one's just starting to grow a little bit. So, not quite sure why that is. Might be the bed, might be because the tree is taking a lot of the nutrition and not allowing the sweet peas to grow. Also planted some cosmos plants. They're doing well. Not had many flowers on it as yet, but I think there's quite a lot to come. Into the fruit cage. Anybody that saw the photographs that I put up on Instagram will see that I harvested quite a bit of fruit last week. So these are blueberries. Quite a few still to come on the blueberry plant. Had quite a lot of blueberries off the bush here. The standard red currant had loads on, as did this bush and this bush here. Just show you, this one has still got some red currants on to be picked. You can see them down there. And over here there are some red gooseberries that need to be picked, so I'll be picking those today. As you can see, there is still quite a bit of bindweed, but I have managed to pull a lot of it from round the edge of the cage. It is a bit of a constant battle. It does overwhelm everything if you don't keep on top of it. So this winter I'm going to have another go at sorting out this cage and seeing if I can dig out some more of the bindweed root. Some blackberries starting to form too. Thanks very much for joining me for this tour in late July. Hope you enjoyed having a look round my allotment again. Thanks very much for joining me at Nick's Allotment. I'll see you again next time.